Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at a different independent role-playing game. This week I'm going to take a look at one I covered in my first look videos, and which came out for full release back on November 7th, 2017. Card Quest. Developed by Winter Spring Games and published by Black Shell Media, who were kind enough to give me a review copy, it is available on Steam for $9.99. Card Quest is a deck-building card-based RPG light that boils down to the basics of what you'd consider a classic RPG setup at its very core, while discarding pretty much everything else. It relies on a retro 2D graphics feel, permadeath but with retained items, and randomized content with simplified exploration. In terms of a storyline, there's actually 3 different quests, as well as a series of training scenarios. Training scenarios simply show how to play the game, and how to play each of the available classes, while the main quest itself each has its own storyline. One deals with an undead plague, one with reclaiming a dwarven kingdom, and the last follows a hunt for a beast in a magic forest. When you start out, you select from one of a few character classes, each of which has its own abilities in the form of cards, and may have their own particular mechanics on how to use those cards. Usually it's something like stamina plus other means to balance which cards can be used in what order. Each class can be equipped with different items, which will further modify what cards they can draw. As you proceed through the game, you can uncover various other equipment, and although each attempted quest starts at level 1, you can outfit your level 1 character with the gear that you've picked up on prior runs. After selecting a quest to play, you are given the background for that particular section of the quest that you're on, and then presented onto a sort of map with the overall quest laid out on it. This map consists mostly of a decision tree, offering branching nodes that eventually recombine at the end towards one goal, offering a series of optional routes through this particular quest. Each node consists of a linear string of encounters which are mostly combat. Combat encounters throw a string of enemies onto the screen which must be dealt with before continuing. Occasionally enemies will have special abilities, the ability to summon or become other enemies, or occasionally be hidden until the combat is over, before springing out and attacking on their own. This latter part is actually more trouble than it sounds, because a fair amount of combat consists of planning which abilities to use in which order, and suddenly having to deal with multiple unknown enemies after you've killed off all the others can really throw planning off. Of course, you can only plan so far ahead anyway, because abilities are randomly drawn from your available deck, as determined by your equipment. Combat proceeds in turns, and your turn lasts as long as you have the energy and other resources to perform actions, before the enemy monsters take one action each. It's sort of a lopsided combat that means if you draw the right series of cards and manage your resources right, you could very well eliminate most or all of the enemy forces before they even get one attack in. This is useful because your health does not regenerate for the entire string of encounters that makes up one quest node, unless you have an ability that lets you recover. It's also advised to make sure that you save enough resources to use defensive cards, because once you've finished your turn, you're limited to whatever resources you had before, and because if you use them in the right circumstances during an enemy's turn, they can be critical in allowing you to live through it. As far as cards during an individual round go, you can have a maximum number of cards in your hand. At the beginning of each round, and as a result of various other card effects, you may draw additional cards, but only up to your maximum hand size. Fortunately, you can discard cards during your turn, basically at will, so you can weed out cards that you don't think you'll use, in hopes of getting more useful ones when you draw more later. Aside from the class-specific and ability-specific card effects, there's also a concept in common called a chain. Certain cards have effects that occur when they are used in succession, in a chain, so to speak, this continuing to occur until you use a chain breaker that ends the chain, sometimes with additional effects as a result. With enough cards that let you draw cards on a chain, you can end up with very long attack sequences indeed. After each combat, experience is accrued, and this can allow you to go up in level. At each level, you get to choose between one of several boons, some of which may increase your effective resource pools, and some of which may unlock new types of abilities. The latter can be an issue if you haven't discovered equipment that lets you use that ability yet, but as you pass through the game bit by bit and accrue more and more equipment, this becomes less and less of a problem. The actual combat itself is rather challenging and can take quite a bit of getting used to. The various special abilities and card chains can make for a decent focus on strategic thinking, and the randomization of the cards and the enemies in a particular encounter means that even in the best-case scenario, you may not get what you need at a particular moment. This means that the 3 included campaigns actually represent quite a bit of game time, if only because of the sheer difficulty. And yet the combats themselves, which make up the bulk of the game, are fun enough to maintain the experience. Graphically, as I said, it's very old-school retro style, specifically using pixel graphics, but it's not tile-based like so many other RPGs, since it is focused on cards on a flat playing field. I think it works well enough, but I have to admit that the UI could have used a little bit more polish. The sound cues are adequate, and that's about all I can really say about the sound design of the game. So where does the game overall stand? For $9.99, you may find it a bit steep, at least for what it is. However, if you do enjoy the core gameplay, that's a different matter. There does seem to be enough content to justify the price range, but the potential feeling of repetition can really be an issue if you aren't very, very much invested in slowly unlocking gear and seeing what each tier of a quest has to offer. My initial impressions of this back when I took a first look at it have been pretty much validated somewhat. A lot of the issues I had with it then have been addressed. They've added more content and made combat even more strategic and challenging. And yet the total reliance on just that one card-based combat style does make it a pretty binary decision as to whether you'll enjoy it or not. If you do enjoy the card combat, you'll probably really enjoy the game because it offers lots of it. And if you don't enjoy the combat, well, then you'll probably want to give it a miss because it makes up so much of the game. I do recommend checking out more gameplay videos to determine whether you think it's worth your while in particular. For now, I'll leave it at that. There'll be links in the description below as always. This has been the RPG Crawler. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you've got feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. If you're feeling particularly generous, I do have a Patreon at patreon.com/rpgcrawler where you can support the channel and future videos. Until next time, take care and goodbye.